Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all our witnesses for being here today and for all the work that you do to help youth and their opportunity that they have. And thank you, Ms. Hilton, for all of your work with the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act. And it's great for us in this hearing today to be able to talk about the committee's continued effort to build a society and a culture that values life. These hearings and through legislation, we're uncovering ways we as a society can better support children, parents, and families. I want to start by sharing a little bit of story about a family in my 4th Congressional District in Kansas. My constituent Bruce is a loving grandfather who happens to be blind. When Bruce's son lost custody of his children, Bruce stepped in to care for his grandchildren. These children became some of the more than 2.5 million children across the country who are cared for by family members and grandparents, which is a great advantage. Placing children in kinship care reduces trauma and provides a higher chance of reunification with parents. As Bruce sought custody with his grandchildren, however, he encountered significant difficulties, one due to his age, but also his blindness, even though he was well equipped to lovingly care for his grandchildren. These unnecessary hurdles to kinship care, that the kinship care process added to the uncertainty of Bruce's grandchildren were already dealing with. Thankfully, in the end, Bruce was able to gain custody of his children. I'm glad Bruce and his family reached this positive outcome, but I know about other grandparents or aunts and uncles or siblings in similar situation for whom things have turned out differently. Those who didn't know how to advocate for themselves and their young, vulnerable family members in order to help keep them and help care for their family. Bruce's story underscores the burdens to kinship care that we should examine and correct. And that's why we're here today with our panel of witnesses to discuss how we can improve the kinship care process. When a child is no longer able to be in the care of his or her parents, every effort should be made to keep the child within the family, assuming those relatives are well disposed to care for the children. Mrs. Peterson, I know you have direct experience with the foster care children. You've covered a lot of things today, as well as dealing with the kinship care process. Can you describe the challenges you faced in going through the kinship care process?
Yeah, as I stated before, just being ignored, not having access to resources, not being made a priority because they knew my sister was safe. It definitely has been an uphill battle to advocate for our family, but more importantly, to advocate for her. I do think that kinship families are often, kinship providers are looked at as lower priority than foster parents and adoptive parents, and that can be really challenging.
Well, and thank you for sharing your personal story with us today and all the details. And it's an issue that in my home state of Kansas we've run into a lot over the last several years in terms of how do we make sure that we do the best job that we can for the children that are in our care. I mean, I know at times different barriers come from a good place, wanting to make sure that we protect and ensure the well-being of children, but too often they end up causing more problems and lead to adverse outcomes. Mr. Geen, how do we strike that balance between ensuring the safety and well-being of children without putting in place unnecessary barriers for things like kinship care when this is the best option for the children?
It is the best option, and I do think research clearly shows that children are safer in kinship care and their well-being is better in kinship care. The question is the licensing process. Fortunately, HHS has new regulations out that give states flexibility in designing kin-specific licensing standards, and hopefully states will take advantage of that. When there's a concern that a kin can't care for a child, as in your example, what can be put into the home to make it safe? Rather than just say it's not acceptable, work with the kinship caregiver. If they don't have the right space or don't have the right equipment, then provide that rather than cancel them out as an option.
Yeah, and thank you, and thank you for all the panelists. Oh, Ms. Mansfield, did you want to add to that?
Would you mind if I added something to that?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that one of the challenges that I often see is for the families that we work with and for our own staff, which is at the Women's Justice Institute, mainly formerly incarcerated, that criminal records can be a huge issue. That a grandparent might have had a conviction 20, 30 years ago, and now they're not allowed to be a kinship placement for their grandchildren or somebody for their sibling, something completely unrelated to the children. We put these barriers in the way, and then the kinship caregivers don't seek to get assistance because they're scared the children will be removed from them because these unnecessary barriers, looking at somebody's record instead of their ability to care for a child.
And thank you all for what you've covered. You covered a wide variety of issues that deal with how do we best care for children. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.